rolling around with a cat. Got a gat in the back of the hatchback. Put a Glocky right out the knapsack. I'ma spray you down. You don't like that? Why do I sound like a UK drill rapper? I was driving around with a kid, and I mean the ketamine. Keep the doors unlocked. Letamine. Well, that was a weird start to the video. What's up, guys? Welcome back to LEGO Garage. Today we are going to be doing, I guess you could say, kind of a compilation video. I'm going to be showing off the collection. I haven't done one of these in a long time. The last time I did was on the Right Trigger channel, which those videos will also be uploaded to the LEGO Garage channel, but I want to put a little disclaimer saying that, hey, there is a new up-to-date video and it will be linked to this. So if someday far in the future you came to this video due to the link that's in that description, hey, good to see you. This is the updated list. As you can tell, this is a long one. There was no way to avoid that. We have a total of 68 cars now. What I want to do is I want to start from some of the newer ones, which is this entire bottom row. As you guys should be able to see right up here, we have the F14 Scuderia truck. Save the best for last because that truly is the best. I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet. I don't want to talk about these cars for too long. I'll just talk about things that are memorable. I'm not going to be going over the years and dates that these things came out in because truly, I don't remember. In fact, there are some cars up here, I don't even remember the name of them. So what I've got is my old iPhone 5S connected to a charger because it can't hold a charge by itself. And if I truly need it, I will look up cars for you guys, just the names to make sure that I get them correct. Let's get started. All right, so I was gone from Speed Champions for a while, and when I came back, the very first car I did was the Mustang Dark Horse. The Mustang Dark Horse is a great car. We have only two other cars that are Mustangs in the series, and while doing those two cars, I had expressed that I really wanted to see an 8-wide Mustang, so I'm glad that we got it. After doing a little bit of looking into the Dark Horse, I did find out that it's a pretty good car overall. It's not the best in its class, but it definitely is up there. You compare this thing to a Demon, and it may get smoked depending on what kind of Demon we're talking about, but either way, very nice car. I love the color. I want more Mustangs. All right, up next we have the Mercedes-Benz G63. I always refer to this as the G-Wagon. I love this car so much. This is one of my favorites that recently came out, especially for the playability of that hood exposing the engine. I think that is a great touch. Overall, I'm a big fan of SUVs. I loved that it's just black on black. It looks like something that the FBI or the CIA would be rolling around in. Those silver exhausts right underneath the side skirts, I think is a great touch. I love the lack of a chassis piece. That's something that you'll hear me say multiple times. Anytime a car doesn't have a chassis piece, it just makes for an overall really fun build experience. The Mercedes-Benz SL63, this came in a double pack with the G63, and once again, we see that it does have that play feature. The hood can go up and it exposed the engine. I really enjoy the color of this during the build process. I was talking about how I like that long hood and how it just kind of keeps going. I love that this is a convertible. We don't have very many convertibles, so it's nice to see when they're there. This is very comparable to another car that we have in the collection that is a 6-wide, except this one, obviously being an 8-wide, is so much better just because there's so much more detail. It's got a pretty rounded back. I like that, and the Mercedes logo I think looks incredible on the front. It's a very clean Mercedes feeling car, and if you know anything about Mercedes, they just kind of scream luxury. We've got the Audi e-tron Quattro. After doing a bit more research on this car, I did find out that this was one of Ken Block's cars. It made my video kind of feel a little bit disrespectful. I talked about how this car felt a bit boring, but after watching Ken Block absolutely rip through corners with one of these, it really boosted its points in my mind of how I feel about this car. I'll never get the sound out of my mind of the car just going as it's going. Dude, I love that. I'm super happy to have this a part of the collection. Just knowing that it was one of Ken Block's cars increases its value to me. All right, and up next we do have the Lamborghini Vision GT. During the build process, I did have some complaints about that back half, how all those pieces are individual. They like to move on their own. Of course, one thing I didn't mention is that because these are on a shelf, I'm not going to touch them, so they're not going to move around. If we're talking simply about the aesthetics, I think this is killer. This is one of the best looking cars that we have for sure. It reminds me quite a bit of the Veneno, at least in Lego form. I understand that the Vision GT and the Veneno don't look too similar, but at least here in Lego form, it does give me Veneno vibes. This is actually the car that had a post that goes straight through the middle and just kind of acts as a, some rebar and concrete. This car does have a weird way of sitting in the passenger where you lift up windshield and the minifig can just kind of lay down and drive at the same time. Really cool, unique car, and I love how wide it is. Next, we've got the BMW M4 GT3. I really want to see the M3 GTR. from Need for Speed Most Wanted. It's the GOAT in a lot of car enthusiasts' minds. I would say that this is a pretty good starter car. I did talk about how I love that livery just kind of has a weird pattern where it goes from the top left to the bottom right. The BMW logo being in quite a few places, I think it looks really nice. I don't know how well you can tell, but I do want to see some more BMWs. But right here, we've got the BMW M Hybrid. I do believe that this is a Le Mans car. I'm not totally certain of that. This was the car that gave me the most frustration just in terms of how many stickers there are. I remember during the build process, this car was really getting to me, especially after doing the BMW M4 GT3, which is already a car that's loaded with stickers. When it comes to this car, I do believe that the aesthetic is beautiful. My sticker placement, even though, yes, I was pissed, I think it came out really, really good. This is another car that lacks a chassis, so awesome. Up next, we've got the Aston Martin Formula One. I will say there's not too much that I can really say about Formula One cars. They have to stay standardized to the legitimate Formula One cars in real life. It looks crazy. The green, I'm not a fan of. I would prefer this to look like a different color. Even with the Aston Martin double pack, when you look at the back of the box, there was like an aqua blue looking Formula One car, and I feel like that would have just been a better looking car. I do understand that we also have a Jaguar E1 car that is a very similar blue, but it's a better color. But overall, I do like the look of the new Formula One cars. Up next, we've got the Aston Martin Vantage safety car. This is in the same green color as the Formula One because it did come in a double pack. I like this car a lot. I don't mind the green as much on this car just because it does look and feel like a safety car. I like that we've got the little lights on the top of the car. I like that the spoiler is pretty simplistic. There's not too much going on there. It just feels like a Vantage, and we like Vantages over here. They're classy. Overall, pretty cool. Have no complaints. Next, we've got one of the best cars out of the series. We've got the Ferrari F40. I wasn't the biggest fan of the mirrors being spoons, but every time I look at it, it's not something that I gravitate towards. I'm not really looking at those. I'm just looking at the car as a whole. Yes, the holes where the headlights are supposed to be is still a little bit irritating. The holes in the doors that a lot of people like to talk about, again, I'm not worried about it. It's all good here. The flatness of the back is, just like I said in the original video having to do with this, is very Lego-y and also very F40, and I appreciate it. I love that the exhausts are just kind of encapsulated in that red cover on the bottom and that exposed engine underneath the transparent pieces. Beautiful touch. Overall, one of the better cars, for sure. We've got another very recent car. This is the NASCAR Next Gen Camaro ZL1. Beautiful wrap. This really is one of the better looking cars. It's funny because between the Ferrari F40 and the Camaro, I thought for sure that the Ferrari F40 was going to be my favorite, but I'm going to be honest, they're very close. I can't tell you right now as to which one is my favorite between the two, but with some time I'm sure I'll have a more definitive answer. The front being so aggressive, this entire livery just being so all over the place, all the flame decals making it feel like a Hot Wheels car, and then the build process for that transparent wing to just perfectly stick out between studs. This is a car where build process and looks come together to make a beautiful package. All right, I'm trying not to call this a McLaren F1 because it's not what it is. This is the McLaren Formula One. This is basically the exact same thing as the Aston Martin Formula One car. In terms of the build process, I can't say too much, but aesthetically speaking, I can definitely say that I prefer the black and orange to the green and black. All right, up next, we do have the McLaren Solus. This is a car that was specifically made for, I believe, the video game Gran Turismo. This is very comparable to the Vision GT. I like how wide it is and how it's kind of that hourglass shape. My only gripe is that there's very little detail with this car. This is a car where I feel like stickers I would have preferred, which is strange to say because typically, you know how I feel about stickers, but this is a car where that lack of detail is quite the negative. I do like that it kind of looks like a cream pop. The color combination, great. The lack of stickers or printed pieces, meh, but the actual like body shaping from a top-down view I think is amazing. Oh, here we go. So this is the first Formula One in 8 wide that I ever did, and this car gave me a million issues. I'll go over this quickly. During the build process, I had made a big mistake on one of the side skirts. As a matter of fact, I believe it may have been this one. Due to that, I was very frustrating during the build process, and I can't even remember if I actually posted a video on this car. It left a bad taste in my mouth. One of these Epson stickers on the spoiler was not given to me in the sticker sheet, and you know, later I ended up getting it. I was just procrastinating. That was my fault. I was being lazy. But I mean, overall, if we're just talking about aesthetics, it's not deserving of either of those biases. One of them is my mistake. The other is Lego's mistake. If we're just talking about it from an aesthetic point of view, it's fine. It's a Formula One car. Not much can be said. Next, we do have the Jaguar E1 car, and I have to say that over the Mercedes-Benz Formula One car that we did just look at, I do prefer the look of this. I think this is a crazy looking car. The black and blue with the skeletonized middle, I think is a great touch. Just a lot better looking. So yeah, I just prefer it. Up next, we do have the McLaren Elva. I gotta say, it's a pretty bland car. It's much better looking from the back than it is from the front. This is another convertible. Like I was saying with the Mercedes SL63, it is quite rare to see a convertible. So one day when I went to the Lego store, I got a little blue keychain guy and I put him in the McLaren Elva just because it's fitting, but I think because of how much blue on blue there is, it's not the best looking thing. Maybe I'll actually use this as a keychain. Something that I didn't talk much about during the build process of this car is those exhausts are very nice. I like the placement. I like where they sit. Those rear lights being so thin, you can just barely see the red peeking through, I think is beautiful. We've got the Chevrolet Corvette C8.R, and what a beauty it is, man. I know that there is a new Corvette that's coming out that is going to be another C8. The numbers for that car is looking insane. I think it's like 1,065 horsepower. Overall, just a monster. I do love the look of the C8.R. It kind of gave me more appreciation for Corvettes in general. So I'd like to see more Corvettes in Speed Champions. This is up there for sure. All right, up next we do have the 1969 Stingray. I don't know much about Corvettes if you're going past the C6, really. This is a very nice color. I do like that it's that weird maroon. I don't really know the names of red colors that are outside of red, so I could be completely wrong with that, but I do love the curvature that we get. I remember when this car was coming out, there was a lot of talk about how the curvature of these angled pieces is not quite correct, which, yes, it's not correct. But this is Lego that we're talking about. I feel like they've come a long way since then. If we were to get an updated version, I don't want an updated version. I feel like it would be fine. But I am talking about the curvature that we get on those side skirts. I think it's beautiful. To get a classic car and to have it look this nice, it's all you can really ask for, huh? Oh man, I'm telling you, we need another Lamborghini. Maybe not the Huracan, that is what this is the Lamborghini Huracan. I would love to see more of these supercar Lamborghinis. I want the Aventador, give me the Veneno, give me everything. I want it all. I think Lamborghinis, their styling, it's just, this is the car that everybody thinks of when they think of supercars. Maybe not specifically the Huracan, but definitely the Lamborghini outline is what everybody thinks of. So I'd like to see some more of these. We have, I think in Speed Champions history, there's 10 plus Ferraris, but we really have a limited amount of Lamborghinis. Let's get some more of these. These exhaust tips on the back, beautiful. The black and gold has always been one of my favorite color combinations. A really, really nice car, and it's a shame that we don't have more of these. We do have the Aston Martin Vantage GT3, one of the more beautiful Aston Martins that we have. I love the curved lime green pieces in the front, creating some of that curvature for the intake. These really fat side skirts get me every time. I love how wide that makes the car, and that back splitter is beautiful. The AMR logo on the back is nice. The rear lights creating that curvy bit. Going around the Aston Martin printed piece is really cool, and this fat spoiler with the lime green tips. It's a nice car overall. Really cool. Now we've got a true rally car. I want to see some more rally cars, but we've got the Audi Quattro. This is one of the first cars that I ever picked up, and I remember at the time feeling quite overwhelmed, but this thing is aged so beautifully. Every time I look at my collection, it's definitely a standout just because it is nothing like the rest. It's so old looking. If you didn't know it was the Audi Quattro and you just saw it on the streets, you'd be like, oh, that person's poor. But no, dude, if you know a thing or two about cars, you'd be like, oh my god, that is one of the rarest vehicles on earth. How is it on the streets? Somebody put that person in prison because they probably stole it. Back in the day, I was just making it. I didn't see this as anything special. Now I know a bit more about the history of the Audi Quattro, and I gotta say, yeah, banger. So we do have the Jaguar E-Trophy. I love SUVs, and as a matter of fact, the SUVs typically don't have a chassis. This has a chassis. The black and blue, similar to the Jaguar E1 car that came out. This came in a double pack with it, so of course it had to maintain that black and blue livery that we've got going on. The spoiler is a little bit flimsy, not the biggest fan when they're on those little C-hooks. They just connect to the car and then to the spoiler. It creates a really, really flimsy spoiler, and I don't really like that too much. That's why I choose not to touch it usually. To end on a positive, I do think this is a really nice looking car. The front being so aggressive, always beautiful when the front's aggressive. All right, up next we do have the Lamborghini Urus. I remember this being a fun car to make because there's so much inside that just makes the car hollow. For the video, we'll go ahead and remove that top, and you can just see if you do remove the top, turn this thing into a convertible, there's a lot of space in there. There is space for multiple minifigs, even though I do believe that hair pieces may collide with the roof. Still, crazy looking car. And if we just look at this underside, you can see that the rear axle is all together. So when I move one tire, the other tire moves at the exact same time, and there is no chassis. That's what made this car so fun to build. You just lay a gigantic foundation and then build on top of that. The tires being definitely larger than most Speed Champions cars is great, and overall a really good looking car. I don't feel like this gets enough love in the Speed Champions community. I want to see more cars like this, or I guess SUVs. Alright, up next we have the Lotus Evija. This is another car where that green color is not quite my favorite. I like more bright greens. As a matter of fact, green is my favorite color. It's just foresty greens, dark greens. They're not really what I kind of look for. The yellow stripes that are going up and down is a very beautiful touch. They tried to replicate that insane rear light pattern that the Lotus Evija has in real life, and I feel like they did a good enough job replicating it. The spoiler is a little bit underwhelming, just kind of being like a skateboard piece or a snowboard piece flipped upside down, so we do have some exposed underside studs, but overall, it's fine. What a beauty, huh? The Toyota Supra. I remember this car came out shortly after the Supra came out. Everybody was so excited. This actually became one of Speed Champions fan favorites just because of how highly moddable this is. You go on YouTube, you look up Toyota Supra mods for LEGO Speed Champions, you're going to find a million different things. This long hood is something I always look back on, just kind of pushing the entire car to the very back. The back is not completely perfect to what the Supra looks like in real life, but if you're not a fan of that, you can always find mods to correct it. And then the front, having those seams in between the headlight stickers is not perfect by any means, but I will say replicating the Supra is probably not the easiest thing, and I'm glad that it at least resembles it well enough. So we do have the Koenigsegg Jesko, my favorite car of all time, the one that I'll never be able to get, the Koenigsegg Agera RS. The Koenigsegg Jesko is basically just continuing the Agera line. I don't know if you know this, but Koenigsegg has had multiple different models. Koenigsegg really started finding its shape with the Agera. And so the Jesko is basically an extreme version of that. The fat exhaust, I've heard somewhere that that's not really an exhaust. I don't remember what it does, but the exhausts on the original Koenigsegg Jesko are hidden somewhere that the LEGO Speed Champions version couldn't really replicate. Overall, I want more Koenigseggs, dude. I understand that we have one. That means that you guys have a partnership with Koenigsegg. We could get more, man. I just want to see them. And I don't want to see that stupid, what is it called? The Gemina or something like that? The little family car that nobody can afford who has kids. So I would like to see some more Koenigseggs. And up next is a true classic. The Lamborghini Countach, beautiful. I remember the build process for this car. We had some strange ways of attaching these parts that are above the rear fenders, and you just you lift them up and then you put them right back down. The interior is all red, which I believe is true to the original Countach. I think that's a really cool touch. We've got those white wheel covers that just make it look nice and old, which is what the Countach is. This thing is a true grandpa in comparison to the majority of the Speed Champions cars that we have. Those rear lights being those, I don't know, cone-looking pieces being covered in white. Very smooth. And yeah, not much more to say. Well, there is one more thing to say. The spoiler, it's unique. This is the 007 Aston Martin DB5, obviously from the James Bond films. I love the metallic silver that we have everywhere. I believe that this car is the one where I talked about wanting a car that looked just like a complete mirror, have every single panel be that silver metallic mirror finish. I think it's really cool. I do remember that this car came with multiple different license plates depending on which version of James Bond you wanted it to be, which I think is cool. Adding that little customizable, characteristics to a car is fine. I remember when this car came out, I wanted to catch up and come up with a favorite so that way I could put the license plate of my choosing on there, but I just ended up with one of the generic ones. Very sleek, very classy, very demure. Let's continue. All right, this is a car that when I got it originally in LEGO Speed Champions, I didn't have enough of an appreciation for, but now I do. This is the Mercedes-Benz AMG Project One. What I was saying during the build process, the review, all that, is that I don't feel like this car fully captures the shaping of the Project One, and I still agree with that, but I do enjoy the shaping that we have here in LEGO. I look at it, I know it's supposed to be the Project One, so there's no issue there. The front is hyper aggressive. The rear is hyper aggressive. That fin in the middle is hyper aggressive. That hood scoop, hyper aggressive. That is basically what I would describe this car as. And I just noticed that one of these rear view mirrors is the wrong way, which is hilarious. It's probably been like that the entire time. Let's continue. Up next, I want to say that we have the 2017 Ford GT with that cool orange and blue wrap. I remember when this originally came out, I wasn't the biggest fan of the orange on blue, but over time it's definitely grown on me, especially when you compare it to the real life thing, which looks just like this. And I remember during the build process, in order to get that sloped piece to go underneath the corner piece that we have next to my middle finger, it was quite the cool process, basically just creating an intake. And I feel like this really captures the look of the Ford GT, especially with those rounded rear lights that we typically only see on Nissans, but of course the Ford GT also has it. Really nice looking car, not much else to say. We have what I think is my king of the 8 wides, the McLaren F1. How amazing is this, man? I remember when this came out, I was ecstatic. I couldn't believe that we were getting the McLaren F1 finally, and now that we have it, it feels like Speed Champions is complete, and we're just going on to the second chapter, I guess. The McLaren F1 is a car that as a kid I looked up to so much because it's the McLaren F1. It held records, it beat records, it was the GOAT. And then Koenigsegg came out and just ruined everything. This is just, I think, my favorite 8 wide car ever made. Up next we do have the Nissan R35 GTR. Beautiful car. I think it encapsulates the R35 pretty well. This actually was one of the first 8 wide cars to come out, and what better car to choose than an R35. I love the wrap. I think that the black on white with the red highlights is perfect. We do have those circle Nissan rear lights. The front is nice and aggressive. Those exhausts are fat, the side skirts being red. Just a great color combination all together. And immediately after the R35, we've got the R34 from Fast and Furious. We do have some underglow on the bottom, an amazing detail for fans. I love that. Brian O'Connor, of course, is sitting on the wrong side because this is a Japanese import. This is one of the cars that makes me really want to see the BMW M3 GTR so bad, because they do have a very similar livery, and I feel like sitting them next to each other just as cult classic cars, fan favorites, I'm talking about to the highest regard. When I was talking about the McLaren F1, sometimes I forget that this is also an 8 wide. It's a tough decision, but they're both really fire. That should tell you that this is either my first or second pick. All right, watch out, Fat Boy coming through. We've got the Ford Bronco. This is one of my favorite cars. This also lacks a chassis, so you already know the build process was definitely unique. We've got a pretty crazy looking roll cage on the interior. If this is a car that you missed out on, I believe that this is now a retired set. It has to be. It's been years. You definitely missed out. I would definitely recommend going on Bricklink and trying to get yourself one. I don't know how much they go for. Maybe I'll find that and put it in the video, but try to get yourself one. I'm telling you, it's one of my favorites for sure. You sit it next to any other 8 wide or even a 6 wide, of course, it's going to look insane. That's why I like it so much. I believe we have the 1966 or 1968 Mustang Fastback. It's a 6 wide. It's a dinky little toy because it's a 6 wide. Out of all the Mustangs we could have got, I felt like we could have maybe gotten something else. I know that there's a huge community of people who love retro cars, and Mustangs back in the day looked incredible. I do think that the green is okay in this sense. I know that earlier I was talking about how I dislike that dark green usually, but having it with a mix of that black and gold, I feel like it does a good enough job. And those wheel covers trying to be the exact same color as the gold racing stripe that goes down the center. Beautiful touch. And up next, we do have the 1966 Ford GT. Again, this is a pretty classic car. Being able to see the 2 most recent Ford GTs that have come out in Speed Champions, I've got to say, it makes me appreciate it more just because we can compare retro to new. You could say the same exact thing about the Mustang. This Ford GT is still, it's got a lot of the same shaping. Overall, it definitely looks like a 1966 Ford GT, and it even is comparable to some of the newer models. Those fat exhausts in the back that you can see here, crazy. The black is a perfect color choice. I like the yellow headlights that are in the front. It's a standout. All right, and up next we do have a Porsche 911 GT. I wanted to get a whole bunch of the 6 wide Porsches because I feel like in 6 wide, Porsches probably look the most similar to real life. I don't know why, but 6 wide is pretty good at showing off the way that the car actually looks in real life. Again, we do have a spoiler that's attached to C-hooks that are attached on the car, which I just don't touch the spoiler. It's got those fat fat exhausts on the back. The livery, once again, beautiful. I like the gray touches on top of the white. It looks like a race car. It's nice. All right, up next we do have the Porsche 911 RSR. This is another 6-wide. Again, Porsches I feel like look fine in 6-wide. We do have that fat splitter on the back. It looks perfect. The livery is clean. The spoiler again is using those double-sided C-hooks, but the spoiler being so fat, it looks pretty good. Not much else that you can really say. It's a Porsche 6-wide. It looks pretty good. This is in fact the Porsche 919 Hybrid. You can see that it's trying to replicate that wing that we see with a lot of these 8-wides, and the 8-wides are able to make that wing much thinner. The spoiler is pretty crazy, just being kind of a box. There's not much else that you can really say about these 6-wide cars. They're very basic, they're very bland, but they're a part of LEGO Speed Champions history. I had to get them. Up next, we do have the Porsche 911 GT Hybrid. Once again, we're seeing a car with that white and orange, reminding me of a creamsicle. I do think this is one of the better ones in the 6-wides, just because it is a much different color than what we're used to, so I think the livery stands out quite a bit. I did choose to put these thin wheel covers on the car, and I think that was a good choice. We're really lacking a rear diffuser, but those exhausts, they look pretty good, and those do look to be the bases of lightsabers that I used to play with as a kid. All right, we're gonna do two at once. We have the white and green 911 Turbo 3.0. The 911 in white I purchased as not a retired set. I remember not caring very much about this car, but over time I grew a huge appreciation for the way it looks, just because it does look so true to the Porsche 911 3.0 Turbo, whatever you want to call it. I wish I had known that at the time, because in retrospect this is a pretty damn good 6-wide. And then of course everything I just said could be said the exact same about the green version of the Turbo 3.0. This I did purchase as a retired set. I'm glad that I did, because having them together, it's the exact same car. It's cool. All right, up next we do have a 6-wide Bugatti Chiron. I purchased this car as a retired set just because I had to. It's the Bugatti Chiron. Do I wish this was an 8-wide? A little bit, just because I think it would look so good. They could do an 8-wide of the Bugatti. I forgot the name of it, but I'll pull up a picture of it right now. This is the car that I'm thinking of. It would be perfect. We do have a rubber band for the rear light, which I find so funny because it's perfect. The rubber band is able to create that thin look that they're going for, and I feel like for a 6-wide, it's doing a good enough job. Up next, we do have the Mercedes-Benz AMG GT3. Woo! This is the king of the 6-wides in my opinion. That dark gray with the yellow and black everywhere. The livery is just perfect. I think the shaping of the car looks beautiful, and this car does come with a play feature. We have another front bumper, out with the old and in with the new, and you can see which one you prefer. I personally prefer the one that I originally had on it. I feel like it just makes for a more aggressive shape, and I like that to a degree. I'm not the biggest fan of having play set stuff coming with these cars because they are model cars, and anything extra that it comes with, I don't know what to do with. This just kind of sits around wherever I find works best. All right, up next we do have a 2016 Ford GT. The red, blue, and white looks pretty cool. It's also still got that same shaping that we see for the intakes on the side of the car that the 8-wide version managed to capture quite a bit better, if I must say. We do have a front splitter. It's a very basic front splitter, just kind of being some 2x2 curved tiles. It looks a bit funny with the studs on top, but that's all right. We do have a pretty fat diffuser. That's always nice. We got a good spoiler, and it's also attached to those angled pieces that are the C-hooks on both sides, so it doesn't get touched very often. And in fact, we could probably just like make it a little bit out there. Looks like a Ford GT. It's doing a good enough job for a 6-wide. All right, up next we do have the McLaren P1, and this is a car that, just like the Bugatti Chiron, I had to get, just because this is one of those cars that when I was in my teenage years, I looked up to quite a bit. The Bugatti Chiron a little bit later. The McLaren P1 was one of those cars that you play any racing game, the McLaren P1 you had better believe was top dog, probably because those video games got paid out by McLaren really well to make sure that this was top dog. It is way too tall. The 6-wide is not able to really capture that curvature very well at all. And in fact, I feel like if anybody were to ask me what car is this, and I told them to guess, they would only be able to say, well, it's definitely a McLaren. The curvature could definitely be a bit better. I don't think we should get a remaster. I would rather we preserve remasters for cars that I find more interesting. I would like to do some new stuff as well, but I will say that this is held in the same regard as the Bugatti Chiron. It's just that the LEGO Speed Champions Bugatti Chiron was able to capture the Bugatti Chiron way better than the McLaren P1. All right, up next we do have a McLaren 720, and what is this, man? I was kind of disappointed when I got this just because of that lack of the spoiler. It's so strange. The orange is not the best color in the world. It's almost a peachy orange. Not my favorite McLaren ever. And being a 6 wide definitely is not helping. I'm trying to think of positives to say for this car after saying a negative, and I'm gonna be honest, there's not much there. It's just kind of to fulfill the collection. We've got it. Great. Next up, we've got the McLaren Senna, and this is the biggest offender when it comes to having a fidgety spoiler. The spoiler is connected by studs, one stud on each side on the base of the car, and then it does have C-hooks that are connecting to the spoiler. I will never touch the spoiler. If I do, I will spend 30 minutes trying to get the alignment perfect, accidentally detaching the studs and reattaching it. If we don't talk about touching it and we just talk about the aesthetic, I think that the gray, black, and orange, which the original Senna did have all over the place, great choice. I remember that this car had some cool rear lights. As you can see, there they are. And in the front, we've got, I think they're transparent red axe pieces. Pretty cool. The rear diffuser, just it's exactly what you look for. It's nice and fat. You'll hear me say that multiple times because it is something that I look for. And the front is a very nice finish. Overall, I feel like this does a pretty good job of capturing the McLaren Senna. All right, and up next we do have a more rally Mini Cooper. I remember I enjoyed this set because it does have working suspension. If you look here, if I press on those tires, they do want to move. That's because it is sitting on a rubber band system that hopefully you're able to see. It's just those red lines. It's got some nice mud flaps on the back. It's hilarious. When I think of Mini Coopers, I definitely don't think of rally. So to have this in the collection, I think it's cool just because it's not what you think of. It's definitely not typical. We have the smallest car in the collection. I believe that this is not a 6 wide. I believe this is a 4 wide car. I like it just because of the uniqueness. That's something that I look for, is cars that are super different. I know that with the Lamborghini Huracan, I was saying that I want to get more Lamborghini Huracans. Well, that's not unique. You'd be asking for copies of what is almost the exact same car. I do want that. I want to get a lot of the cars that I really love, but so does everybody. But also, I do want to get more cars that are just strange, out there, weird, and this is that. All right, up next we do have the Ford Mustang GT. For the longest time I was calling this a 2018, but I recently was watching a video and I think this car actually came out in 2016, something like that. Not the car itself, but the set. I want more Mustangs, and this was kind of the catalyst for that opinion. I would love to see more Mustangs for sure. The Dark Horse is great, but it's kind of a different looking kind of Mustang. I want to see a 2005 Mustang. Those were aggressive. Up next we do have the 6 wide NASCAR Camaro ZL1. We did recently talk about this car because we were doing the next gen 8 wide Camaro ZL1 NASCAR. That car just blew this out of the water. Don't get me wrong, I still appreciate this car. Fun fact, there was once a time when Lego had actually sold a double pack that was both the Ferrari F40 and the NASCAR ZL1. That's not what I got. I wish I did because I probably would have struck a deal, but very strange that they were doing that. Maybe these were not selling too well. This, it definitely looks like a dinky little toy. And like I had said in my video about the next gen, I do feel like this stood the test of time pretty well. For being a 6 wide, I feel like it gets the job done, but I feel like that's probably pretty easy to do with NASCAR. Next, we do have the 6 wide hatchback Ford Fiesta. I find this car very funny. I wanted this car because at the time when I had purchased this car, I had a Ford Fiesta. What's funny is that when I got this car, I wasn't super into hatchbacks like I am now. Nowadays, I think hatchbacks are my favorite kind of car. You would know that if you saw my last video. Hatchbacks are really some of my favorite cars. So it's cool to see this car, and I'm glad that we have it. Next, we do have the Pagani Utopia. We need more Paganis, okay? There's only 2 other that I know of. That's the Huayra and the Zonda. Give us more Paganis, please, for the love of God. This car is nice. The rear coming together was crazy. This whole thing is just all connected. It does have some wiggle still. The entire rear bumper is just one piece connected in the middle. The front is nice and aggressive, and the rear, they try to go for what the Pagani Utopia has in real life. If you've seen it, you've seen it. Maybe I'll pop up a picture. In real life, it's crazy. Here, they didn't do that bad showing it off. It's pretty good. We do have the Porsche 963. Beautiful. I love how flat and low to the ground it is. We've got that thin fin in the middle. The spoiler is so nice. A lot of people talked about how these rear lights could be a lot thinner. In Lego, I don't know how we would do that, but I mean, where there's a will, there's a way. 8 wides recently have shown us that almost anything really is possible, even though, you know, I give them the excuse, oh, it's Lego, of course there's going to be mistakes here and there. I do still feel that way, but some of the recent cars and even this car proved that we're only going up. This car, I feel like it looks totally fine. It's passable. It's great. All right, we're finally moving on to that top shelf. It's the Dragster! One of the coolest cars that Lego ever did. This is basically the 8 wide Scuderia truck. It's super dusty, forgive me, but really cool, man. I love how gigantic it is. I wish that it could be seen a bit better in my collection. I do have it on the top right. It's behind a couple of cars because I don't know how else to show it off. but I really need to find a better space to put this. Maybe for the time being, since I don't have cars to fill in the gap anyways, we could just put it right here. You can't see it because of the microphone. There we go. I think that looks good. Up next, we do have the Aston Martin Valkyrie. This is another car that I really appreciate quite a bit. I do like the color choice. The lime green with the red and black everywhere is a pretty good choice. The back is crazy. I love how extreme that all is. And the front having that thick splitter. Beautiful. I remember when this came out, it was my favorite 8 wide at the time, but then we got some crazy cars like the Fast and Furious R34 and the McLaren F1. So this quickly got overtaken. But at one point, this was my favorite car, and it's especially because of how long it is. If you compare this to any other car, it does actually sit longer. The wheel covers are quite extreme, and we do have that thin fin, just making for an overall pretty nice look. I do feel like we could have gone with some printed pieces and some stickers. It is a bit bland on the sides, but if you look at the rear of the car, there is more detail. So it's not as bad of an offender of lack of detail as the McLaren Solus. All right, up next, we've got the 6 wide Dodge Charger. I love that fat engine. This is another car that when it came out, I remember that there was a piece that it came with so that if you didn't want the engine to be sticking out like this, you could just place a piece right over it and get rid of the engine. But of course, what fun is that? I'm not doing that. I lost the piece that covers that up, and we're just sticking with the engine, which I've got no regrets for that. It looks exactly as I would want it to. Like I said, I do look for unique builds, and this one having the engine sticking straight out is absolutely unique. Up next, we've got the Dodge SRT Demon. This is my generation's god muscle car right now, and it has been for years. The Demon is one of the craziest cars of all time. I remember when this car first came out, they were selling packages that would allow you to remove seats in the car and things that just added weight. So if you wanted your 0 to 60 to be ridiculous, well, they weren't allowed to sell you a car like that, but they could sell you a way to get it to be that. Yeah, just a funny car. I feel like this is a car that works really well in 6 wide just because it's such a boxy car. So we do have a purple Challenger. I like the purple color. What's funny is that while I was making the Camaro ZL1 Next Gen, I talked about wishing that I had a car that was that nice purple. And I just completely neglected the Challenger. This is that nice purple. This color is beautiful. It's the main thing that's going for it. That's why I like it so much. The hood scoop is nice and fat. We love that. There's not much more that can be said. It really just does feel like a classic muscle car. All right, now we have Don's Charger. And, well, you may recognize this as very similar to the 6 wide. It basically is. I believe that the 6 wide was just them trying to do this without having the Fast and Furious name attached to it. We do have that fat engine sticking out of the hood. The wheel covers are crazy. We've got Don sitting in the car. If you're a big Fast and Furious fan, this car is probably exactly what you're looking for. I like Fast and Furious, but not as much as I used to, so I do have an appreciation for this car. All right, this is not a part of the 68 car number, but I guess we'll talk about it quickly. A while ago, I wanted everything that Speed Champions had put out, so I purchased these poly bags. I haven't purchased a poly bag since the Valkyrie. I don't care for them. They don't fit in with the rest of the collection. I just have them up there because I have them. Up next, we've got the Competition. I remember that when they released this car, they had brought some new fenders to the game. This is a car that shows those off really well. It has a lowered stud, so that the fender goes above the stud, and you can really see that right here. That fender just perfectly reaches the hood of the car. This car it feels like a really good representation of the Competition. I remember when this car came out, there was leaks and talks that maybe we'll get a yellow Ferrari Competition, and I was so excited because I want that so bad. Every Ferrari is red. I get that that's what they want, but come on, man. Let's just get a little, let's get a little crazy, man. Let's do something weird. All right, up next, we do have the Ferrari LaFerrari. This is a 6 wide. It doesn't look as good as it would in 8 wide. I'm not asking for a remaster. I would like to see 8 wides of new cars. So, this will just have to do. It's not a car that I'm super impressed with just because I feel like similar to the McLaren P1, the shaping isn't quite all there. It's just another Ferrari to fill up the collection. There's so many Ferraris. I want to get them all. I want to get everything. So I had to get this. It serves its purpose, just being a part of the collection. There you go. All right, up next, we do have the Scuderia Corsa Ferrari 488 GT. This is just another Ferrari that this was cheap. I guess the demand wasn't very high on Bricklink for one of these, so I decided to get it. I don't know too much about the 488 GT, but I've got it. It's to fill the collection. Same thing. I like the livery enough, but once again, Ferrari's refusal to do any other color than red is just kind of holding it back to me. I will say it looks better than the LaFerrari for sure. Up next, we have the Ferrari 512M. This is an 8 wide, and I think they did a killer job with this. The mono cockpit with the driver directly in. You can just open this up and there's your driver. Very cool. Classic car for sure. I don't really have too much to say. When this car came out, I didn't know very much about it, and to be honest with you, to this day, I still really don't. It definitely captures that retro aspect of the 512M by having the side skirts being non-existent. I don't know what else can be said about this car. It's cool. Up next, we have the Ferrari F8 Tributo. This is the first 8-wide Ferrari, and I've got to say it's one of my favorites for sure. I love the aggressive look of everything. The rear window is that staircase effect. Yeah, it's a Ferrari. It's a Ferrari. I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry. Up next, we do have the Ferrari F40 6-wide, which recently got a remaster, looking a lot better. This is still a car that I would recommend to anybody if you want to see where the remaster came from. You could probably find this on Bricklink. I don't know how much these would go for now. Considering the fact that the F40 remaster just came out, it could go either way. Because there's a remastered F40, it could be cheaper because there's a better option, or it could be more expensive because everybody wants to compare it to the original. I don't really know. I will say that this was a fun car when it came out. I love having it. I remember when it came out, it did have an interchangeable spoiler. You would literally just grab this black piece and you can switch it out for a red one. Big whoop. So, yeah. There you go. All right, so just like I said we were going to do, we've saved the best for last. This is the Ferrari F14 Scuderia truck. This is my pride and joy when it comes to Speed Champions. This is the king. I talked about having a 6-wide king. That was the Mercedes AMG GT3. And then I talked about having an 8-wide king, which could be either the R34 or the McLaren F1. But when it comes to just simply what is my favorite set, it's the truck that released when Speed Champions initially came out. And this truck is the greatest thing they've ever came out with, I think. It does have a lot of play sets. As a matter of fact, this right here can just come down. And then what we can do is we can open up these two little like doors. And you guys should be able to see the inside. I do have the car right over here. There's a little push button right over here. And I can just send that out. It didn't go all the way, which is hilarious. But here we have our little F1 driver. He comes with it. The set comes with a whole lot of minifigs. I don't know how many it was. It was like 8 or something like that. This is definitely the king. It comes with multiple bags. It's a long process. Hundreds of pieces. And I feel like it killed it. So let's go over a couple of the things real quick. On the inside, I've got a moped. It has working wheels. We got some of these little like tool things right here. I don't want to remove it because it is sitting on studs. I don't want to put them back. We have a different front bumper for the F1 car. As you can see, it's got this one on. It does come with a second one. We're going to detach from the front of the truck. As you can see, front of the truck just kind of looks like this. Very simple, very bland. Again, this is the beginning of Speed Champions. Not too much going on. However, the truck bed, it does have a little piece that can kind of act as like a stopper. If I move the F14 truck, you can see that it's just kind of sitting on that while the actual truck itself is not attached. And that's just connected to a little hinge system back here where I can twist this knob and that goes up and down. This is a truck that I was chasing for years. This thing was very expensive. On Bricklink, it cost me an arm and a leg. It's up to you whether or not you decide that it's worth it, and I wouldn't blame you for not wanting to. It is something that I really wanted though, and I got it, I think, 7 years after it retired. It's stood the test of time in terms of my expectations that I had with this truck. And ever since getting it, it is still my favorite LEGO Speed Champion set that I have. I know that this is a long one. Hopefully it wasn't too long. I don't know. In post, I'll have to find out how long this video actually is. If you guys enjoyed, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. This video took forever to make, and I know that because I was there for the whole process. Wow, you're actually being nice for once. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.